Hello and welcome to today's Bitrix24 webinar, Better Business Processes. Thank you for joining today. Okay, so we'll just go through some introductions. So my name is Sam Connor. I'm part of the sales engineer team here at Interface, and we're a Bitrix24 Gold partner. So what we do is we specialize in the Bitrix24 software, starting off with pre-sales support, so we can help evaluate your requirements and see if Bitrix24 can manage what you're trying to achieve. We can then help with implementation, so we can build out the system for your specific requirements. If you're interested in the self-hosted edition of Bitrix, we can provide you with our hosting services. And then we provide ongoing dedicated support and training to essentially help you get the most value out of the Bitrix24 system. Okay, so if you join today's Better Business Processes webinar to actually get more information about what the Bitrix24 application actually is, let's just cover in a little bit of detail what the Bitrix24 system actually covers. So Bitrix24 is a collaboration suite of well in excess now of 40 different tools that you can use to manage your business at a very high level. There are more than 12 million customers now that use the Bitrix24 system around the world. And the system is available in two different editions. So first of all, we have the Bitrix Cloud system, and then we also have the Bitrix24 self-hosted solution. There's two different editions there. Now, we will mention today during today's webinar if there are specific features or functionality that is only available on certain tiers or certain editions of Bitrix. So please do ask any questions about those different editions as we go through today's webinar. And in terms of pricing, so prices start from approximately $49 per month for the cloud-based system. And if you're looking at the self-hosted edition, priced slightly differently, but the self-hosted edition is available starting with the Business 50 package, and that will cost $2,990. It's classed as a lifetime license, but you do need to renew your license each year under the subscription model. So that's something to bear in mind. Each year you need to budget for the renewal of the license. Okay, so today's webinar is going to be focusing on business processes. So I think it's important, first of all, to just actually understand what business processes actually are. What do we mean by a business process in the Bitrix24 system? So a business process essentially allows an organization to execute and monitor a workflow of information on different objects, such as documents, CRM items such as leads and deals, tasks, HR items, such as leave requests and expenses. So a workflow can be in many different areas of the Bitrix24 system. And it is a flow of information defined by either a route or a scheme. And there are many different types of business processes that you can run inside Bitrix24. So let's just go into a bit more detail now to cover the different types of business processes. So as we can see on the screen here, starting off, we have what we call a sequential business process. So a sequential business process, let's just go over to our Bitrix24 system. And we can see here, this is a sequential business process. So an important point to understand with a sequential business process is the process performs a series of consecutive actions on an item from a predefined starting point, like we can see here at the top. From that start point, we then go through a flow of actions here. So this is looking at a leave approval workflow. So here we're going through requesting the leave. There's then an approval decision that gets made here. So we go through that entire action until we get to this predefined endpoint. So that's the key aspect of a sequential business process. You have a start point and you have an end point. And in between there, you have a flow of actions that takes place. The next type of process is a state-driven business process, and you'll find these quite a lot on documents within Bitrix24. You can see straight away the total difference in the actual UI of this process. It is very different in how it's constructed. And a state-driven business process, it does not have a start or an end point. That's the clear difference here between the two. What it does have is a series of statuses. So here, for example, on a document, we have a draft status, publishing status, and an approval status. And on each of those statuses, we can then trigger child processes on here. So as soon as we move to the draft here, we can then send for approval or move to publish. So we have actions underneath the status there. So that's a look at a sequential business process and then a state-driven business process. Some more very popular types of processes we can also run are within leads and deals, and also smart process automations inside the CRM system, and that is automations. So inside our automation center, this is looking at automations inside leads. What we can do is we can create specific actions. That could be either actions to communicate with the lead or actually actions for your internal team. So what we can do is we could create automatic rules at different stages of our lead process here. And as you may know, that within leads, you can create different stages. So you can really customize the lead flow here from new lead to arrange call. That can be completely customized to your specific requirements. And at each of those stages, we can then create automatic activities, such as here, as soon as the lead comes in at the new lead stage, we're sending out a thank you email, thanking the lead for their inquiry. So you can start to automate activities and also create activities for your internal team. So you could create tasks, for example, for the responsible person at each stage of your sales process. And then the other type of process is robotic process automation. So this was set up around a year or so ago as a replacement to the business process designer tool here. Bitrix found that some customers found the tool maybe a bit overwhelming, a bit too difficult to actually set up your own processes. So robotic process automation was then set up, and it uses a lot of the same technology from the CRM system. So inside a robotic process automation, you can create your different stages for the workflow. So here, this is looking at a business trip workflow. So we can create the business trip expense, move to approval, and then we're submitting an expense after the trip. So we've got very predefined stages there. And what we can then do is we can create automated rules as we move that expense through those different stages. So it's another way of setting up a workflow, but it uses a lot of the functionality from leads and deals in the CRM system, which many Bitrix24 customers are very used to. So that's the other type of process we could set up inside the Bitrix24 system. Okay, so that's a look there at the different types of business processes. And as we mentioned at the start, if there are any questions as we go through today's webinar, please do add them into the question box in the chat area on Zoom, and we can run through those during the intervals of today's sessions. So please do add those into the question box. Thank you. Okay, so we've looked there at the different types of business processes available in Bitrix24. But now let's take a look at actually where those business processes can actually be run through. So on both the cloud and the self-hosted, we can run business processes on HR and admin areas, such as the feed section. So we can run and manage leave requests or expenses directly through the feed. As we've seen already in the CRM system, on most CRM entities, such as leads and deals, we've got automations. but you can also run sequential business processes on leads, deals, contacts, and companies. And then we also have smart process automations where we can run additional automated processes. We can run automations and workflows on documents. So we've seen how you may want to use state-driven business processes on documents. And it's also possible in projects or in any area where you have lists, you can create a business process on a list. And for professional and higher tier cloud accounts and on-premise editions, it's also possible to run automated processes on tasks as well. And with the self-hosted edition, because with the self-hosted, it is the most advanced edition of Bitrix24, it's also possible to build in business processes in other areas of the system. So such as on user profiles, you may want to feed information through a workflow from the user profile to a different section of Bitrix24. So if that's something you're maybe interested in about creating processes, maybe where you can't see them right now in Bitrix, the self-hosted edition with access to the source code could be the solution that you are looking for. Okay, so let's now just go back into our Bitrix system and let's just take a look at some of those areas in more detail here. Okay, so let's go into our feed section. So if you're not sure where your feed section is right now, it could be under the collaboration area. If you can't see it, just open up the collaboration section first of all, and then that will open up your feed area. Okay, and then from there, we can then manage our workflow. So if I wanted to request annual leave inside the system, as an example, I can click under more, and then I can go to the workflow area. And then in here, I can see the different workflows that I can now start to trigger. So if I wanted to request new leave from the system, I can click on the leave form and it opens up that form ready for me to complete. And I would just mention here as well, with the form that you see here, say is the request leave form, you can customize this. So you don't need to stick with what the mandatory fields are here. If you wanted to maybe add different fields, remove what's mandatory and so on, you do have the flexibility to customize this to your specific requirements. So that's where in the feed we can add our workflows into the workflow section. And it's also possible if you want to actually customize what workflows are available from the feed, we can customize this. So if we go into the workflow directory, inside here, I can turn on and turn off what workflows I want to show in the feed, just ticking and unticking these buttons like so. That's in the feed area. We mentioned how you can store and manage workflows on documents. So if we go to the company drive, then inside here on the settings, what we can then do is you need to turn on, first of all, the configure business processes. You just need to make sure this button is turned on to activate that inside the system. And then we can see the different types of business processes that we have assigned to documents inside the system. So if I go into a documents, I can see here the different permissions available through the workflow section. So just make sure you've turned on the button on the company drive to establish the business processes inside the system. Okay, so that's looking at adding workflows to the drive area. And as we can see here, you don't have workflows in one section. They really are in many different areas of the Bitrix24 system. We've seen how we can have automations on leads and deals, but if we go into a company as another example, then what we can see inside here, if we go into a company, I could manually run a business process from here. So if you go to the top right-hand corner of leads, deals, contacts, or companies, you can run workflows directly from the system here as well. And then let's go into tasks and projects. So inside the task area here, you've got an automation section. So if we wanted to, we could create our own automated processes on any project we have inside the system. So you can see the Kanban stages here. that we can progress tasks through on the Kanban stage. We can then set up automated processes at different intervals of the Kanban view here. So what's quite nice, I think, here is, for example, if a task becomes overdue, so if that task has not been completed by its deadline, we can then automatically, using the trigger here, so a trigger will automatically update the stage of an entity, we can move that to the urgent stage. And then because it's at the urgent stage, we're then automatically changing here who is responsible for that task. So it could go to a more senior project manager to get that task back on track. So that's a really nice way to look at how you could use automations on tasks for your inside your projects. And as I say, this feature is only available, it's on all self-hosted editions and any edition of the cloud, which is the professional or higher tier. Okay, so let's look at tasks. And I did mention if we just go into a project, it is also possible inside a project itself to manage inside a list area. If you wanted to, you could run business processes on lists. So lists are essentially tables of information. And inside here, you would then be able to run and manage expense requests, for example. So you could go into here, see your expenses, and you can then see all of the expenses for the project. And we can see what has been approved, what expenses have been rejected inside the system. So if I wanted to, I could run this workflow from here and run an approval process directly through the project on that expense. Okay, so that's a look at some of the different areas we can manage and run business processes within Bitrix24. Let's just see if we've got any questions that you would like to have answered. Please do ask any questions. It doesn't really just have to be related to business processes. Any types of questions you have, we can run through today. Okay, question that has come through on LinkedIn: is Bitrix supplied with specific built-in business processes? So again, it does depend on your tier of license, but there are some out-of-the-box workflows that do come with the system. So if we come back into our workflow area and go into the feed section, if we go into the workflow directory here are the standard workflows that are included with Bitrix. So we have an expenses report, general requests, leave approval, purchase requests, and business trips. So some quite varied workflows there that are included with the system. And if you then want to create and customize your own, that's really where we come in as a partner. We specialize in building and designing workflows that give you more power and control in your business. And we're very experienced in setting up workflows for our clients. So if there is maybe a particular type of workflow that you're interested in setting up, please do contact us, sales@interface.com. We can then discuss your workflow in more detail and help you to design that inside the Bitrix24 system. Okay, so moving on now, we've seen where the different areas are to create the business processes within Bitrix24. Now it's important to understand actually how we can create a business process. So Bitrix24 includes a very advanced visual editor tool for building business processes, and specifically the sequential business process is what we can design with the building blocks. So there are around 40 pre-built action blocks that we can use to design our business processes, and it uses drag and drop technology to enable us to build out that process inside our system. So let's take a look at how we can use the business process designer tool to build our workflow. And what we're going to look at today is a slightly different type of workflow that you could create, and it's something that's becoming quite popular because what it can do is actually connect the CRM system with the project management side of Bitrix24. So just to explain where we are right now. So right now we're inside deals and we're inside one of our pipelines. And what we can then do inside here is, at a certain stage of our deal pipeline, we can create a business process that creates a project in the project management area of Bitrix24 for our project team to start working on a client's project once the deal has been won inside the CRM system. So this is a really useful and a very common flow of how a company and organization would work. Your sales team manage the sale in the CRM system. Once the deal is won, you really want to be notifying your project team and creating an area where all of the tasks for that client's new project are going to be managed and initiated from. So what we're going to do here is, where the deal is at the one stage, we're going to go into the workflow designer area to create a business process. So we can see here, this business process we're about to create will only be triggered when the deal hits the one stage. So it's only going to happen at the one stage, and it's using the business process designer tool. So first of all, on the right-hand side here, you can see, just to explain a bit about the business process tool here, is these are the different action blocks that we have available on our workflow designer tool. Okay, so there's a huge variety of action blocks that we can use and create inside the system. One difference with the self-hosted edition is that you can use the PHP code block, and that can become very powerful because it enables you to use source code to actually design and build more advanced workflows inside the system. But what we want to do is, when the deal hits the one stage, we want to create a new work group in the project management area of Bitrix24. So what I'm going to do is move here the create a new work group action block. And the business process tool here, it uses drag and drop technology. So I can move that into place. And now I can move into the area where we need to populate information about this new group. So first of all, I'm going to give this a title. So I'm going to call this client project. So this is what the action block will be called. And then we need to give a name to the project itself. So what I can do inside here is, I'm going to take the name of the deal. And that will then be the title of the project itself. And I need to decide who is going to be the project owner for the new project. So I'm going to choose our head of projects, which is Jim. Or you could have multiple people as well. So if you want to have two, you can customize this. And then you can have group members as well. So who are the additional participants we know we need to add into the project? So here, essentially, we are automating something that would be very manual for many businesses. Once a customer's project is won in the sales team, you then need to bring that group of people together. We can start to automate that process using this business process designer tool. So I can feed those people into the system, and let's just save that inside the area here. And then what we can also do is, we can create the different activities, such as tasks, that need to be completed on that workflow as well. So it may be, for example, we need to have a scoping meeting. So let's add a scoping meeting task into the system here. And then I can choose who is going to be responsible for this task inside projects. And we can then add a description for the task. Okay, so we're adding a description. Again, if you want to add multiple participants into the tasks, you can do. And of course, you can always come back to this business process to configure and customize the workflow as well. So we're adding our information. Then what we also need to do is, we need to add the actual additional information for who this is going to go to inside the project. Excuse me. And then what we can do is, we can add any additional information, such as if you want to bind this to a CRM entity, that information can then be saved inside the system. So you could add a whole flow of tasks into this work group. If there are mandatory tasks that every single customer project has to start with, those mandatory tasks can be automated inside this workflow here. And I'm going to save that information inside the system here. Okay, so that's now been saved inside our deal database. So if we now go back into one of the deals that is currently being worked on, so we've got a standard license and support deal here. And let's just update this with the title of the company. Then as we progress through those different stages, we can manage the sales team can manage the deal through to the close. Once that deal has been won, then what we can do is we can see that project has now been created. The task has also been created here. So that scoping meeting task that we've just set up, it's been automatically created inside the system here. And if we go into our work group area, we can see that the TechCo standard license and support project has been set up, and it's brought through the members from our workflow here. So it's brought through Lucy, it's brought through Jim. So it's automatically created that project inside the system. So that's just one example of how you could use business processes inside Bitrix24. And I think that's a really useful way to actually run a process. It really saves time when when the CRM side of the system, this deal has been won by the sales team. You then want to bring a group of people together from the project management side who are going to be working on the customer's project. That can completely be automated using the business process designer tool, as we've just seen. And it can also reduce the impact of human error by making sure any tasks that need to be started straight away, those are started immediately using our task generator inside the business process designer tool. Okay, so let's look at creating business processes using the business process designer tool. Now let's move on to actually look at how we can trigger business processes in a bit more detail. So I showed you today how you can create that business process based on actually the deal hitting a specific stage. But it's also possible to run and trigger those business processes in a variety of different ways. So first of all, we can run a business process on creation. So let's say, for example, when a company record is added into the CRM, we could then trigger a process. Or if a piece of information in there is updated, again, that could trigger that business process. We've seen already how we can manually trigger a process. So from the activity stream, for example, if we're going to set up a leave approval, that is a manual process. Or within the CRM system, we've seen how you would inside any entity from leads, deals, contacts, and companies, you can set up that manual process. And the same with documents as well. You can get some more power if you wanted to using webhooks. So maybe connecting Bitrix with another system, you could then trigger a process via a webhook. Or with the self-hosted edition, we do have more control and advanced functionality. So it's also possible with the self-hosted edition to run a process via the API or by creating rules. So if I just come into our control panel of the self-hosted edition, one example of how we could create advanced processes is within the mailbox area. So you can connect your mailboxes inside Bitrix24. But what we can do with the self-hosted edition is we can create rules on those mailboxes. So for example, we could automatically inside the help desk module create a help desk ticket when an email comes in on a specific mailbox. So if you've got a support at mailbox, for example, where people can submit support messages, with the self-hosted edition, we could then automatically create a rule which moves and creates a ticket inside the help desk module. So you can really start to get an advanced power using the self-hosted edition of Bitrix, because we can create advanced triggers using the API and the advanced functionality that the self-hosted system can provide you with. And we did have a question earlier on in the week here, is the API available on the cloud? So with the cloud edition, you have access to the REST API. With the on-premise self-hosted edition, you have the full API, and the help desk module here is only available with the self-hosted edition of Bitrix. So it's really deciding how much power and control you want on your workflows. If you want the most advanced functionality, then the self-hosted edition of Bitrix is the edition that you should be looking to invest in. Okay, so that's a look at how we can trigger business processes. Now let's take a look at actually running some examples of business processes inside the system. And what's quite nice here is I'm going to show you another way of how we could create a project inside the system. So I've shown how we could automatically create a project when the sales opportunity hits the one stage. Now, it could be for your own internal processes. Maybe you want slightly more information to be inputted before the project can be started. So another way we could do this is actually maybe in the workflow section of your feed area. We could have a project form that has to be completed inside the system here. So we can see when we want to create a new project here, there is a form that needs to be completed for our user before the project is created inside the system. So let's call this a particular project. Let's call this Better Business Processes Project. Okay, then I've got specific pieces of information that I need to input. So different roles associated to this project, and I need to add a project deadline. And not mandatory, but then you have an area here where I can add a description. Okay, and we may want to add documents. And again, you can customize this form and you can decide exactly what fields are mandatory and what are not. We then have a type here. Now, this is important because based on the type of project I select here, option A or B, then this will distinguish what tasks are added into the project. So this could be very useful for businesses that have maybe specific categories of projects that they run. You could add those categories into here, and it's essentially a condition. So based on that selection, it's then going to attribute specific tasks that are added into this project. So let's select project B and submit. So this has now been approved in the system, and I just need to confirm the estimated deadline as the project manager. And I'm going to approve the deadline that I have added. And we can now see the Better Business Processes project has been created. So if we now go back into our work groups area, we can see that Better Business Processes project has been added. And we can then also see the tasks that have been added into the project here. And we can then now start working on those tasks inside the system. So we've seen twice today in this webinar how we can trigger the creation of a project in two very different ways. So you can start to decide yourself actually what you think is the most appropriate way for creating those processes inside the system. And what we'll do here, let's just go into our workflow area. And here is where you would see any workflow approvals that you are associated with that you need to confirm inside the system. And the project workflow we've just created, I just want to show you the business process designer tool in the back end of Bitrix that we have used for this. So inside here, and if we go into our business process designer, you can see here when we created the project, first of all, we had to input the information about the project. And then as we filled in the information here, we then had an option whether to choose project A or choose project B. And we chose project B, so that added the design tasks into the project. Whereas if we choose project A, it would have added the scoping task into the project. So you could add many more if you wanted to. You could add more branches to that condition to really customize it to your specific requirements. But that's one way we could manage that approval inside the system. Okay, so let's look at the business process. Now, another very popular way of running a workflow is using automations inside our lead and deal database. And a popular way to trigger the creation of that lead is using website forms. So in Bitrix, you can create forms using the form designer tool, and that can then allow you to automatically create brand new leads inside the CRM system. So if we go into a form that we have created inside here, we won't go into too much detail today about how we create those forms, but essentially you can pull any information from the CRM system. So here are all of our custom fields. So you can pull any fields into the CRM, and you can choose which entity within the CRM system, when this form is triggered and submitted, where that information should go in the CRM system. Okay, so let's just take a copy of the link of the form. You can embed those forms. You can embed those forms into any particular web page that you have. So if you wanted to actually continue using your existing website, you could feed the form and take the code that is created and embed the form into your website. But here we've got a form, for example, I've got some information about this person. So let's just update their record inside here. And we've got some additional piece of information we need to input, but let's submit this form inside the system here. And what we'll see is now that will automatically feed into our CRM system. So we've created here the lead entity. So if we go into our CRM system, what we can then do is automatically have a new lead created inside the system. So just now that's created a brand new lead record in the CRM. And we can then use automations. So you can see here now automatically that has sent out an email to the client who submitted the form, thanking them for their inquiry and saying one of our team will be in touch soon. And that's using automation. So inside here, as soon as the lead came in at the new lead stage, we've set up an automation to send out a templated email thanking that lead for their inquiry. So you can see from the lead form, creating that lead in the system, we can then use automated processes to communicate back to the lead and create activities for our sales team. So you can really start to streamline processes using a collection of the different business process tools inside the Bitrix24 system. Okay, so that's a look at how we can manage some live examples of business processes in Bitrix24. Now, most of the tools that we've seen today, they are available on both the cloud and self-hosted editions. They both include the editor tool to manage business processes. Now, if you want to use business processes, as we mentioned, you would need at least the professional cloud edition of Bitrix or the enterprise. All self-hosted editions of Bitrix include the business process designer tool. I think really the main difference between the cloud and the self-hosted system is the option to run processes on extra modules with the self-hosted, so such as from the user profile, or if you wanted to create rules and processes on mailboxes, so then we could automatically create a help desk ticket inside the help desk module as an example. You have more flexibility to really customize your processes with the self-hosted edition of Bitrix. Okay, so in summary today, on today's Better Business Processes webinar, we've seen how we can run business processes on a huge variety of areas of Bitrix, from documents, nearly all CRM items, HRs and list features. We can use simple drag and drop workflow technology to create our own business processes in the Business Process Designer tool. And those business processes can be triggered in a variety of ways, from manually triggering, automated, it could be at a certain stage of the lead or deal process, or with the self-hosted with more advanced capabilities, we could trigger via email or API call. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Here are a selection of our up-and-coming webinars. We're here every other Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I just want to thank you very much for joining today. If you have any questions before the next webinar, please do contact us at sales@interface.com, and one of our team will be happy to assist you. Thank you very much for your time today. Bye for now.